The fourth process of the build, acquire and implement domain, called manage availability and capacity, has 5 practices. The second practice is to assess business impact. The entities that are responsible are the head of IT operations and the IT service manager. The entity that is held accountable is the business process owners. The practice receives 2 inputs, which are the service level and operational level agreements from the AP09 process and the agreement revisions from the BAI03 process. It generates 2 outputs, which are the availability and capacity scenarios and the availability and capacity business impact assessments, both to be used internally. The activities involved in this practice include identifying the critical solutions and services that affect the availability and capacity process. The resources that these solutions and services depend on should be focused on. Capacity-related logs should be assessed to detect failures or deficiencies, and to help predict future ones. Scenarios should be created to estimate future availability situations, and the required levels to reach performance goals. The likelihood and impact of these scenarios on the business performance should be assessed, and the business process owners should understand and agree on the results. The third practice is to plan for new or changed service requirements. The entities responsible are the business process owners and the IT service manager. The entity that is held accountable is the head of IT operations. The practice receives several inputs that include the acceptance criteria from the BAI02 process, the approved high-level design specification, and the documented solution components, both from the BAI03 process. It generates 2 outputs, which are prioritized improvements and performance and capacity plans, both to be used by the AP02 process. The activities involved in this practice include reviewing the service trend analysis to identify availability and capacity implications. Business changing needs should be assessed if they require better availability and capacity, and the needed improvements should be prioritized. The capacity plans should be adjusted to accommodate those new changes. The organization's forecasting techniques should be evaluated by comparing actual demands with forecasted ones. The fourth practice is to monitor and review capacity and availability. The entities responsible are the business process owners and the IT service manager. The entity that is held accountable is the head of IT operations. The practice receives no inputs, but generates 1 output, which is the availability and capacity reports, to be used by the MEA1 process. The activities involved in this practice include reporting to the management information related to the capacity and availability of resources. Results should be regularly reported and reviewed by the business and IT management, and integrated within the budgeting process. The fifth and last practice is to investigate availability issues. The entities responsible are the business process owners, the head of IT architect, and the IT service manager. The entity that is held accountable is the head of IT operations. The practice receives no inputs, but generates 3 outputs, which are the performance capacity gaps to be used internally, the corrective actions to be used by the AP02 process, and the emergency escalation procedure to be used by the DSS2 process. The activities involved in this practice include assessing the optimal performance of products for peak workloads. The identified capacity and performance gaps should be identified and prioritized. Corrective actions to address capacity issues should be taken, including adding resources or shifting workloads. An escalation procedure should be defined to manage emergency capacity problems. Other sources that provide further insights into this process include the ISO 20000 standard and the ITIL framework.